Chapter 5, The Spanish Lords. The next day, Papa and I met at the usual place. I begged him not to tell anyone about my back. I told him I was going to cut school that day. It was gym day and all the guys would see my back in the locker room. I didn't want to have to answer questions about my wounds. I didn't want to be faced with the need to protect my mother's honor again. After a little deliberation, he decided to cut school and keep me company. It was the first time I had cut school since I started going to Thule. I had thought about it before, but realized how close to home the school was and always decided against it. Papo took me to the clubhouse of the group he belonged to. I still didn't know too much about these groups. The only knowledge I had was that they were always the most popular guys and the most attractive girls always hung out with them. That's all I had to know. The name of the group Papo belonged to was the Spanish Lords. Their clubhouse was located right across the street from the school. Papo told me that the guy's father had also been a member of the Lords when he was younger, so he let them have the basement as a hangout. I asked what the difference was between his group and the group from von Humboldt, but before he could answer, we were at the clubhouse door. Papo advised me not to ask any questions about the group in the clubhouse and promised to answer my question later. He knocked on the door and replied, "Lord Papo," when a voice on the other side asked who it was. The door swung open. He stepped inside and told me to wait outside for a minute. I didn't see who had opened the door. Papo was being very secretive, as if he was hiding something. I became nervous, wondering what Papo was doing and why he was taking so long. A couple of minutes later, the door opened and Papo asked me to come in. Inside the basement, we walked over to another door and entered through it. The room was dark. The only light was from several purple fluorescent lights. The walls were decorated with various glow-in-the-dark posters. A song by Daryl Hall and John Oates broke the silence. "She's a rich girl, and she's going too far, but you know it don't matter anyway," the song said. The room was filled with smoke, and the distinctive smell of marijuana was in the air. After my eyes adjusted to the lighting and focused, I could see 2 sofas and several chairs. There was a big console television at the end of the room with a stereo system on top of it. A couple of the chairs were occupied, 2 by guys and 1 by a girl. I went with them into another room where there were 2 older guys, about 20 or 21 years old. They had a big plastic bag of what looked like dried leaves. They were busy stuffing it into little brown paper envelopes. So that's where the nickel bags came from. All this time, I thought some company had manufactured them. Papo introduced me to these 2 guys. They were called Rican and Little Chino. Little Chino was Puerto Rican but resembled someone of Asian descent. He had a light complexion, brown eyes, and long brown hair that tied into a ponytail. Little Chino had a slim build and had many tattoos on his arms. The most noticeable of his tattoos was one on the left side of his chest. He had a tombstone with the name Loco and the letters RIP written inside of it. I told him my name. He glanced at me and said, "What's up?" Then went back to his business. Rican was bronze skinned and had a big afro. He looked more African American than Puerto Rican. Rican was into weightlifting and was really huge, but seemed friendly. He told me that he was looking forward to having me become one of the brothers. Rican instructed Papo to introduce me to the others. We went back into the smoke-filled room. Papo went over to a corner and turned on the lights. Simultaneously, everyone began complaining about the light being turned on. When Papo told them that Rican had told him to introduce me, they suddenly all came to attention. She was a heavy-set white girl with gigantic breasts and a badly done homemade tattoo on her upper left arm that said SLs. Sexpot was in no way a beauty queen, but she had the reputation of being easy to get into bed. The other girl in the room walked over to Sexpot and said, "You're such a fucking whore," then walked out. The other 2 guys there started laughing and introduced themselves. One was called Joker. He was about 18 and was a high school dropout. In fact, everyone in that room except for Papo and I were dropouts. Joker was high on marijuana and kept giggling and teasing Sexpot. The other guy was called Pothead. He smoked pot for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and in between meals. Well, you think so? Pothead was tall, muscular. He studied a little and had this tough guy attitude about him. It seemed like he didn't like me too much. He told me that if I ever backstabbed one of the Spanish Lord's brothers, he would kill me himself. Papo quickly stepped in between us and told Pothead to cool out and give me a chance to prove myself. Joker offered me a cigarette. I took one and studied it. It was a cool. I had no idea what to do with it. Sexpot started laughing and said, "Well, look at here. Papo done brought me a virgin to teach. Come here, honey. Let me tell you how to smoke." Before she could go any further, I put the cigarette into my mouth and proclaimed that I wasn't a virgin. I lit the cigarette and taught myself to smoke by watching Pothead. Papo turned off the light, sat down next to me, and told me to kick back. About an hour passed. Little Chino came out of the room and asked if we wanted anything from the store. "Yeah, man, some brewskis," replied Snake. Shortly after, Rican stepped out of the room and turned on the lights. He asked me how I was feeling. I told him I was fine and asked him for a cigarette. At this point, I would have done anything to pass the time. Rican told me that the only kind of cigarettes he had were the funny looking ones. I wondered why everybody in the room started laughing, but told him to give me one anyway. As Rico handed me the joint, Papo took it from him and said that he would light it up. Everyone was surprised and asked why he had suddenly decided to start smoking pot. He said that since it was going to be my first time, he wanted to join me. Papo lit the joint up, inhaled the smoke, and handed it to me. I watched his face turn tomato red as he tried to hold the smoke into his lungs. He gasped out and started coughing. Everybody laughed, including him. Now it was my turn. I put the funny-looking cigarette in my mouth, inhaled, and held the smoke in my lungs, just like Papo had done. I started getting dizzy and began coughing and gasping for air. The room was going around in circles and everything was blurry. I could hear laughter and then I heard chanting, "Hit it again, hit it again, hit it again." I knew they meant for me to take another puff from the joint, but everything was blurry. I couldn't see the joint. I thought to myself, what the hell, I don't have to see it. I brought up my hand to my lips and went through the motions only to find that I didn't have anything in my hand. The chants were for Papo, not me. I had dropped the joint without realizing it, and Papo had picked it up. Everybody was hysterical about that. Rican embraced me and told me that I was alright, man. At this time, Little Chino came back and started passing out beer to all of us. After several hours of drinking and smoking, it was finally time to leave the Lord's clubhouse. I had entered the world of drugs and alcohol without even realizing it. There was no peer pressure. It was more the desire to be like everyone else, to belong. The school day was... What the hell do you think is peer pressure? That is peer pressure. The school day was over. It was time for Papo and me to blend in with the rest of the students going home. We had smoked 2 joints and drank a couple of beers apiece. We were pretty high and acting silly. Papo told me he was going back to the clubhouse and that he would see me later or tomorrow. I walked home, hoping that Pedro and my mom wouldn't notice that I was high. I got home and went directly into my room. My mom didn't find that suspicious. I had made it a habit ever since I started getting beat up by Pedro. I lay there thinking how much fun I had had and how accepted I felt when I was with the Lords. The beer I drank and the marijuana I smoked relaxed me and made me feel like I had no worries in the world. I felt like I had finally woken up from the nightmare my life had become. Everything was better. I couldn't stop thinking about having seen Sexpot's breasts. Although I found her very unattractive, I couldn't stop fantasizing about her. I thought about how I would go up to her the next time I saw her and make out with her. I thought about how fat and ugly Sexpot was and how attractive the girl was who cussed her out. I wondered who she was. Too bad she left before I could meet her. My mind was racing 1,000 miles per minute, leaving me behind. My thoughts made me panic, smile, then panic again. It was an awesome experience. I was falling asleep when my little sister knocked on my door and told me to come and eat. I told her I would eat later. She advised me to unlock the door before Pedro noticed that I had locked it and started trouble. I thought about it and knew she was right. I got up and unlocked the door and went to sleep.